Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are preparing for a React.js interview or just looking to improve your React skills, you are come to the right place. In today's video, I'm going to go over some essentials React.js interview questions and their answers that will help you take your skills on your next level. So whether you are a beginner or an experienced developer, stay tuned because there are something here for everyone. Let's dive right into it. The first question is what is React and why would you use it? React is a JavaScript library created by Facebook to make building user interfaces easier, especially for single page applications. The cool thing about React is that it lets you break your UI into reusable components. So instead of repeating code, you can use the same components in different parts of your apps. Plus, React uses something called the virtual DOM, which helps manage changes efficiently. So your apps runs faster without unnecessary redundancy. Is popular because it's fast, flexible, and has a huge community and ecosystem for tools around it. What are the main features of React? The first feature of React is component-based architecture. React lets you break your UI into reusable components, each managing its own state. This keeps your code organized and easier to maintain, especially as your app grows. JS6 is a syntax that looks like HTML but works inside your JavaScript. It makes your code more readable and lets you easily mix JavaScript with your UI elements. React uses a virtual DOM to boost performance. Instead of updating the real DOM with every change, it compares changes in the virtual DOM and only updates where what is necessary, making your app faster. Unidirectional data flow. React has one-way data flow, meaning data moves from parent to child components only. This makes your app states easier to manage and debug since it's predictable. What is difference between props and state? Props and state are both ways to manage data in React, but they serve different purpose and behave in distinct ways. Props are like the prop parameters we pass to a function. They are inputs that come from a parent component to a child component, and they allow the parent to pass data or behavior like a function to the child. The important thing about props is that they are immutable. Once passed, the child component can't modify them. If you want to make any changes to that data, it has to be done by the parent. On the other hand, state is internal to the component. It's like the component's own private data stored that it can update over time. A component can update its state using the set state function, and when the state changes, the component re-renders to reflect those changes. Unlike props, state is mutable, meaning the component has full control over it. In simple terms, think of the props as things you pass into a component from the outside, while state is managed within the component and can change over time. What is JSX and how is it different from regular JavaScript? So JSX is a syntax that looks a lot like HTML, but it is actually used inside JavaScript. It makes building React components easier because you can see your UI structure right in the code, just like it will appear in the browser. JSX gets transformed into regular JavaScripts like React.create element, which then creates the actual DOM elements. So while it feels like writing HTML, it's really just JavaScript. What is the virtual DOM and how does React use it? The real DOM is what the browser uses to represent the structure of your web page. The problem is every time you update something, the entire page can re-render, which shows things down, especially in large application. So React solves this with the virtual DOM, which is lightweight copy of the real DOM. And when something changes, React updates the virtual DOM first, compare it with the previous version. This process is called diffing and figure out the smallest changes needed, and then it only updates those specific parts in the real DOM instead of re-render the whole page. This makes your app faster and more efficient by avoiding unnecessary DOM updates. Explain the difference between functional components and class components in React. So functional components are simpler and written as regular JavaScript functions. Originally, they didn't manage state, but the React hooks, they can now handle both state and side effects, making them much more powerful and the flexible. So class components are, on the other hand, are written using ES6 classes and can manage their on state and lifecycle methods. However, with the introduction of hooks, functional components have become the preferred choice because they make the code cleaner and easier to work with them. What is the difference between state and set state? State and use state. Uh, State in React refers to an object that holds dynamic data that can change over time and trigger re-renders when updated. It is a key part of the React component because it allows component to be interactive and reflect changes in the data without reloading the entire page. And the use state is a hook introduced in React to enable functional component to have state its own. It is a function actually that allows you to declare a state variable directly inside a function component. When you call use state, it returns an array with two values, the current set state and function to update the state. So simple comparison both of in between both of them. State refers to a general concept of data that can change over time and causes re-renders. And use state is a hook used to specifically is functional components to manage state. It is used to create state variables in a functional component. Explain the concepts of use reducer hook in React and how it works. Use reducer is a hook similar to use state, but is better suited for more complex state logic, especially when the state depends on previous status and on multiple actions. It works by dispatching actions to a reducer function which then updates the state based on the action. It's often used in a large scale application where state transitions are more involved, such as managing complex form with multiple inputs or handling different user interactions. So how it works, you pass a reducer function and an initial state to use reducer. And then in second step, the reducer function takes the current state and an action, then returns the new state based on that action. In last step, instead of updating the state directly, you dispatch actions that describes how you want to update the state. And the next question is explain the concepts of use effect hook in React, common pitfalls when using use effect. So use effect is the hook that lets functional components handle side effect things that happens outside the component logic, like fetching data, subscribing to a service, or manipulating the DOM. It runs after every render by default, but you can control when it runs by passing in a dependency array. So it only triggers when certain values changes. So here is some common pitfalls the use effect included. Number one is missing dependencies. If you forget to add dependencies to the dependency array, you effect might your effect might not update correctly because it always makes sure the array contains all variables that the effect depends on. Otherwise, it cause re-render continuously. So, and the second is over frequent re-renders. It is dependency array is not, if the dependency array is not correctly specified, the effect might run too often, causing performance issues. And the third and last one is pitfall is memory leaks, not cleaning up side effects like subscription or timers can cause memory leaks, especially in asynchronous operation. And the solution is return a cleanup function from use effect to cancel subscriptions, timer, or other side effects to avoid all these problems. What is custom hook in React? Custom hook is a JavaScript function that allows you to reuse stateful logic in React. It starts with the word use and can call other hooks inside it. Custom hooks are a great way to abstract away reusable logic like data fetching, window resizing, or form handling. What is use context hook? So use context is a hook that allows you to use React Context API more easily in functional components. Instead of passing data down through multiple layers of a component, which is also called prop drilling, use context lets you access values directly from the context. It's a great for things like global themes or user informations that you need to across many components. You can use context and pass in the context between objects to get the current context value. What is useRef? UseRef is a hook that for accessing DOM elements directly or keeping persistent values across renders without causing re-renders. A common use case is when you want to grab an input element to focus on it programmatically. It can also store a mutable value that doesn't need to be triggered or re-render when it checks. So like keeping tracking of the previous values of state variable between renders. What is use memo? Use memo is a performance optimization hook. It is used to minimize the result for an expensive calculation so that it only recalculates when one of its dependencies changes. For instance, if you have a function that computes a heavily value, you can wrap it in a use memo and React, it will recalculate when the relevant data changes. So this can help avoid unnecessary re-renders and improves the performance of React applications. And the next one is use callback. There is a too much hooks, and I guess this one is the last one in my list, but not least. So this is use callback. Use callback is a similar to use memo, but instead of memoizing a value, it memoizes a function. This is helpful when passing functions to a child component, as it ensures that the same function instance is used unless the dependencies change. It prevents unnecessary re-renders of child component that rely on the function as a prop, which cause improved performance in those cases. So the next question is explain the component lifecycle in React. This is very important question, and it is mostly asked in interviews. So you should aware very well about all the steps of component lifecycle. React provides a specific lifecycle methods. The first one is mounting. Mounting means when a component is created, constructor runs first, followed by component did mount method. When the component is added to the DOM, this method is called. And the second method is updating. When a component state or anything in data is changed, component did update method call and it handles any updates. Unmounting before a component is removed from the DOM component will unmount method is called to clean up the things like canceling timer or unsubscribing from service. For functional component, we handle lifecycle events with hooks. In first step, mounting and updating, use effect replaces the lifecycle method, can run when the components mount, updates, or even when certain dependencies change. And unmounting inside use effect, you can return a cleanup function that runs when the components unmount, similar to component will unmount method in class component. What is the role of keys in React list? Keys help React keep track of which item in list have changed, are been added or removed. Each key should be unique to its item, so React can identify what need to be updated without re-rendering the entire list. Without keys, React would have to re-render every time, even if only one changed. So, which can cause a slow things down and hurt performance. Another important question, how do you pass data between components? Normally, candidate says you can pass data through props and state and this kind of stuff, but it is very critical question and you should understand it very carefully. How do you pass data between components? The three ways is used to pass data between different components. The first one is props. Props are how you pass data from a parent component to a child component. It's a one-way data flow, so the child can receive the data that can't directly change in it. And the next is context API. Context API is useful when you need to share data across multiple components without passing props down through every level, which is also called prop drilling. It allows you to manage global state more easily. And the last one is state management libraries like Redux. For more complex state management libraries like Redux help you centralize and manage the application state in more organized way, especially when dealing with large, deep nested components. So, what is the context API and when would you use it? First, we see what is use context, but now this question is slightly different from use context, and it need to be understand very carefully what is context API and why would you use it. Context API provides a way to share data globally between components without passing props manually through each level of a component tray. It's useful when need to manage global states, like when you are deploying theme in your app, either you are using user authentication or a local data. So it will be used in that case. It avoids prop drilling and simplifies state management. Another important question is almost in every interview, they must ask you what are higher order components, or they can also ask what is HOC. A higher order component or HOC is a pattern in React where you take a component as an input and return a new version of that component with added functionality or props or anything by adding a new version and return it back. Essentially, it allows you to reuse logic across multiple components without repeating the same code. For example, you might use a HOC to handle things like authentication, logging user activity, or applying a theme to several components in your app. It's a way to enhance components without changing their original structure. Uh, this one is also important question, and normally everyone asks in every interview. Explain the concept of prop drilling and how to avoid it. I already mentioned about what is prop drilling, but now I will told you specifically about prop drilling. Prop drilling refers to through passing props through multiple layers of components, which can make the code harder to maintain. To avoid prop drilling, you can use the context API or any state management libraries like Redux, which allow you to share state more efficiently without passing props at each level. And the next is what is lazy loading? Lazy loading is when you only load components or resources when they are actually needed. So instead of loading everything upfront in React, you can use React dot lazy method to break your code into smaller chunks or bundles. This way, parts of the app only get loaded as the user navigates to them, so which reduces the initial load time and improve performance of your app. So for example, if a component is only used a specific route, React won't load it until user visit that page. So this kind of stuff, keeping things efficiently, this will be used. This is not too much important question, but you should know what are fragments and why are they used in React. Fragments let you group multiple elements without adding extra HTML tags like a div, because it keeps DOM cleaner and more efficient by avoiding unnecessary elements, especially when you need to return multiple elements from a component. Then you must use fragments instead of add multiple divs. Another important question, this is almost every interviewer asks, what is or explain about React reconciliation process. Reconciliation is how React updates the UI efficiently. When a component state or prop change, React creates a new virtual DOM and compares it to the previous one in process called diffing. It then updates only the parts of the real DOM that have changed, reducing unnecessary DOM updates and caused improved performance of your apps. What are portals in React? This question is not normally asked in interview, but you should know because this is the new feature of React. So portals allows you to render components children into a different part of the DOM outside of the parent component hierarchy. This is useful things like when you are opening model, tooltips, this kind of stuff you are using, you want to element to appear outside the normal structure of its parent component. Another important question which every interviewer almost asks about control and uncontrolled component. So control component are form elements like import text area select where the component state controls the form data. The value of the input is always driven by the component state and changes are handled by the on change event. This makes the data flow predictable and allows React to fully control the form behavior. Uncontrolled components, on the other hand, manage their own data internally, use refs to access the input value directly from the DOM instead of having React control the form data. Uh, this is not too much important, but you should know at least the difference. What is server-side rendering and how it is different from client-side reference rendering. Server-side rendering in React when the HTML for a page is generated on the server and sent to the client. This means the page is fully rendered with the content before it reaches the user, and it improves the initial load time and SEO because search engines can easily index that content. Client-side rendering is basically when the browser depends a bare bonus HTML page and then use JavaScript to build the entire UI dynamically on the client side. So it allows for a faster interactions after the initial load because everything is handled on the client side. Another important question, uh, what are pure components in React and how do they differ from regular components? Regular components actually re-renders every time their parent component re-renders, even if their data, props, or state has not changed. This can lead to unnecessary re-renders, potentially slowing down your app. Pure component is smarter. It checks when its props or state have actually changed before re-render. If nothing has changed, it skips the re-render and then making your app more efficient. It does things is a using a swallow comparison. So, for example, if you are displaying a list of items, regular component will re-render all items, even those items that have not changed. But a pure component, on the other hand, will re-render only the changed items. This improves performance. Uh, how do you optimize a React application performance? There is a lot of different ways to optimize React application performance, and this is a very important question. And you should aware all the steps, all the things which used to be improved in React application. So make sure first you need to minimize unnecessary re-renders. One way I do this by using React dot memo for functional components and pure components for class components. So this tool helps and ensure the components only re-render when their props are state changed. Otherwise, they will not re-render. Second, avoid inline functions and objects in render methods because they can cause child components to re-render every time when the parent render. So instead of use callback and use memo to minimize function and computed value when needed. And the last one is you always use code splitting and lazy loading because with React.lazy and suspense load component only when they are needed. So it reduces the initial bundle size and improving load time. So for a large list, Windows techniques for libraries like a React window to only render what's visible on the screen, which significantly reduce the number of DOM. So that's it for today video. I hope you found these React.js interview questions helpful. If you did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss any update. Feel free to drop any question in the comments below and let me know what topics you are like me to cover next. Thank you for watching and good luck with your interviews.